Philosophers and theologians ask the question, how can God be all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good and allow there to be so much evil in the world? Because if he doesn't know about all the evil, he's not all-knowing. And if he's not able to change it or create a universe that prevents the evil, then he's not all-powerful. And if he's just tolerant of so much evil, he can't be all-good. And one way that philosophers resolve this and theologians resolve this is that they say that the greatest gift that God can give us is free will. And part and parcel of that means the will and the freedom to do terrible shit. And so if you have free will and you want to make a terrible, evil decision, you can. And so that's the good with the bad, that's the terrible situation. And it doesn't completely resolve the question of the skeptics, because they're like, well, why can't God create a universe where you have free will, but you're still not tolerating this vast amount of evil in the world and terror and torture and pain and genocide and a million other terrible things? There's a lesser known theory, and I'm not saying I originated it. What if the amount of evil isn't as vast as we think? And so I'm going to give an odd paradigm, and then we'll circle back to how it relates to the religion. If you are a child and you've never experienced a shot, that vaccine shot is the greatest pain you've ever experienced. And so you're just screaming your head off because you don't know how to calibrate pain. That's the worst you've ever felt. Or if you burn your finger or something like that. And then similarly, when you're a child, a car ride to grandma's house that takes 20 minutes feels like forever. You know, if you're 5 years old and a 20-minute car ride, it's a significant portion of your 5-year lifespan. But, and again, I'm not the first person to coin this, but if you look on a relative ratio, the 10-year-old experiences that 20 minutes as literally half as impactful as the 5-year-old does. And the 20-year-old experience it as 1/4 as much as the 5-year-old. Because as the person gets older, that amount of time becomes a smaller fraction of your life. And you can just look at things on that relative scale. And so similarly, pain and duration change as you mature and get older. If you're lucky enough to live 100 years, vaccine shots and that one time you got burned and that 20-minute car ride, those are just blinks. They're just nothing. If you encountered, let's say, a gross miscarriage of justice and you went to jail for something you didn't commit and you're innocent and you went to jail for 40 years, most people on earth, and especially atheists and agnostics, would just be horrified. That'd be one of the worst possible things they could imagine. 40 years of your life being incarcerated when you're innocent, it's just unfathomable. It's bad enough if you were guilty, but innocent, just unfathomably terrible. Well, what if you lived 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000,000 years? That 40 years becomes the equivalent of a 5-minute wait time to see the doctor when you have an appointment. And so being delayed by 5 minutes in a doctor's office or being delayed on a tarmac with your flight for 10 or 15 minutes, it's annoying in the time, but it's meaningless compared to your life. And if you believe in heaven, then you believe in eternal life, in eternal bliss by God's side. And so eternity is such a vast, unfathomable concept. But anything divided by infinity is zero. So if a 40-year unjust sentence is nothing to the person who lives 1,000,000 years, it's 1,000th of nothing for someone who lives 1,000,000,000 years. And as you go further, a trillion, a quadrillion, a Googleplex number of years, it's so meaningless that the amount of pain and duration of pain and horrors is just a blip. It's the equivalent of a shot for a toddler or a 20-minute car ride for a 5-year-old. So when you understand that, if you believe in heaven, then there is no amount of pain or injustice or horror on earth that remotely compares. Again, I'm not saying I originated this theory, but just in terms of the internal logic and the coherence of the argument, thinking there's so much evil in the world is only accurate if you have a 100-year horizon. If you have a billion-year horizon or an infinite horizon, everything on earth is nothing compared to the eternity of heaven. And again, I'm not advocating for a particular religion. I'm just saying that I think that this philosophical concept is fascinating, to me at least, that how can God be all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good and still allow evil? He can allow evil because eternity turns any amount of pain and genocide and horrors on earth into nothing, by comparison at least. Again, I don't mean to diminish those horrors, and especially if you don't believe in that kind of religion that has a concept of heaven. And what happens if the atheists are right? I mean, again, I'm not trying to challenge the faithful or the skeptics, but trying to evaluate it in philosophical terms, it does resolve that question, because there isn't so much evil when you compare it to the eternity of time and eternity in heaven.